Despite Kirby's cute and cuddly nature, he's gotta slay some pretty menacing and demonic creatures in the climax of his games. Today, we're gonna look at the final boss fight in every mainline Kirby game and rank them from peak to bleak. In the original Kirby's Dream Land, you take on King Dedede in a classic showdown, but unlike every fight after this, Kirby doesn't have his trademark copy ability, meaning he's at quite the disadvantage. The king hops around the arena throwing his weight around and swinging his giant hammer, and you can only attack him with the stars that spawn after he slams into something. Instead of having an OP power-up, it's just vanilla Kirby, so you have to avoid these attacks and play with the resources Dedede gives you, which is great. And while it's visually pretty standard as an early Game Boy game, it's a lot of fun to play and offers a unique challenge compared to future entries. Honestly, it's an excellent finale. The final chapter in Kirby's adventure starts off a lot like the last game, with King Dedede and Kirby duking it out in a very familiar manner. He's got a couple distinct attacks that look a lot flashier, but it's more or less the same stuff. And the big difference gameplay-wise is that, yep, Kirby can bring an ability into the battle, which makes it a lot easier. It's comparably good, but that ain't even the final boss. After you take back the Star Rod from him, Dedede chases you and begs you not to put it back in the fountain, but Kirby doesn't listen, and so awakens the thing Deeds was so terrified of, Nightmare. They do a little scaredy dance together, then he sucks in Kirby, and spits him toward the enemy. The first phase is against Nightmare in his orb form, and you fly around avoiding his star attacks while sending yours back at him. It's a glorified space shooter, but the next phase, where he takes on his true form, is a high-speed chase through the stars where he's got way more attacks and is a hell of a lot better at avoiding yours. The music and atmosphere here is tier, and it's about as menacing of a foe as the NES could possibly handle. The look in this pixelated Dedede's eyes says it all. This is a peak final boss. This is a peak final boss. Kirby's Dream Land 2 has a lot in common with Adventure. You take on the Deed Man in the same old battle, then the actual bad guy appears, this time from inside Dedede, and Kirby takes to the skies to take him down. He's got a giant sword in hand, and so does his newest foe, Dark Matter, who's got some solid attacks, projectiles, charges, some good stuff. It's not that hard to beat though, and so commences the final phase, versus Dark Matter in eyeball form, and while he shoots plenty of crap at ya, if you sneak behind him and slash away, it's pretty easy to take the dub. You can tell it really wants to be Adventure 2.0, and it hits on a lot of those same beats, but feels less original for obvious reasons, leaving it as mostly style over substance. Kirby Superstar doesn't have one clear finale, since it's got so many different games in one, so it's hard to give an overall verdict to, but I think that variety only plays to its advantage. Spring Breeze is a remake of the original Dream Land, so it brings back the Dedede fight looking better than ever. Dynablade ends with a fight against the giant bird itself, which is super creative and tough to beat. The Revenge of Meta Knight has an iconic sword duel followed by a chase off the exploding halberd. The Great Cave Offensive has Wham Bam Rock, who's got an interesting design. And Milky Way Wishes caps off with battling a giant jester named Marks. Each of these battles holds up damn well in its own right, and gives the package as a whole something for everyone, so it's gotta go up in peak. Dream Land 3 makes Dark Matter actually matter. Where the second one made him feel like bad guy of the week, this one makes him much more significant. It kicks off with another possessed Dedede fight, but this time his belly opens up and has teeth, which is terrifying. It blends a traditional Deeds moveset with Dark Matter's abilities, and it's a cool battle that sets up for the actual finale quite well. You ride up to this weird looking void and take on a way more threatening Dark Matter than before. He has actual personality in his moveset, and it's hard to avoid this stuff. But after he dissipates, a massive eyeball spawns out of nowhere, and this is your final boss. Apparently it's named Zero, and Dark Matter is merely one of his pawns, which is made no more apparent than when he launches waves of mini Dark Matters at ya. It's a weird finale. The scenery is super trippy, and finding out this eyeball is the evil mastermind doesn't sit all that well. If it ended after Dark Matter, I'd feel a lot better about it. It'd feel redundant, sure, but adding Eyeball Man doesn't really help with that. It's got spectacle for sure, but lacks in most other areas. Kirby 64 kinda has two final bosses, but Miracle Matter takes place before the Dark Star level, so it doesn't technically count as the finale, which is a pretty big shame because it's much better than the true final boss, Zero 2, that's literally its name. It's the same floating eyeball as before, but now it's got wings, whoop-de-friggin-doo. You fly around shooting at it and dodge some pretty tame attacks, it's cake. I like that it's in 3D for the first time, but it gives you so much more room to avoid things, and the boss fails to provide a good enough challenge to be called the climax of the game. If Miracle Matter were included, with the sheer variety of attacks it has and the ability combos it gives you access to, I could advocate for maybe an excellent finale, but Zero 2 tries and fails. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror goes out with a bang. Instead of opening with a fake-out fight against DDD, this one has you take on a Meta Knight lookalike, which is so much cooler. And once you beat him, you're sucked into this strange void, and despite the real Meta Knight being right there, he only tosses in his sword to help out, which is better than nothing, but come on, dude. In this other dimension, you take on Dark Mind, which is more than manageable with Meta Knight's blade. You beat him up a couple different times and have to track down different mirrors to keep whooping his ass, which breaks up the battle nicely, but it's still fairly straightforward. After you defeat him for the 4th time, yeah, 4 times, he explodes and sends the fight into phase 2, where he's, get this, another f***ing eyeball. This one looks a good bit scarier though, and he's got some hyper powerful attacks, even being able to flip the stage upside down like Palkia does in Smash Bros, which is pretty innovative. Even when you beat that though, he shrinks a bit and the gameplay morphs into an arcade space shooter, which plays sorta like the Orb Nightmare fight back in Adventure, and finally, after depleting this health bar, the credits roll as Kirby continues to beat the ever-living piss out of this guy. I was gonna give it peak, but it just keeps going. Was the shooter really necessary? It's still excellent, but could use a bit of fine-tuning. Kirby Squeak Squad ends with a face-off against the head of the Squeaks, Daroach, who's been corrupted by Dark Nebula the most. This fight's great. He's got all kinds of attacks, teleports around the stage, and feels pretty powerful for a mouse. Taking care of him makes the spirit of Dark Nebula leave his body and take off, so you gotta keep up with it through a short level, and I like when boss fights work platforming sections into them, and while you're not directly in combat with him here, he's on screen and it ties the battles together well. Then in the final phase, they kinda drop the ball. He's a star with a big eye, which isn't all too intimidating, but his attacks are based on different Kirby abilities, and that's nice, but it doesn't make up for how underwhelming and short it is. It starts off pretty strong, but doesn't stick the landing. It's mid-tier. Kirby's Epic Yarn isn't considered mainline, but it's one of my favorite games in the series and has a solid ending, so I had to include it. Yin Yarn isn't the most frightening villain by any stretch of the imagination, but he does put all your skills to the test in some great ways. He's been stitching together all the problems you face throughout the game, and this fight is clear proof of that, with him bringing back former bosses to help him out. But I especially love when he drops the quilt in front of the screen and makes you platform up to the exit. It plays a lot better than most of these other bosses, with Yin Yarn manipulating the arena and requiring some tight jumps to beat. But all that doesn't make up for the lack of difficulty. I mean, it is mindless, which was perfect for 8-year-old me, but leaves a lot to be desired in the grand scheme of things. Oh, and the final phase being tank bot spam is icing on the cake. Boo. It tries, and in a lot of ways it succeeds, but it fails in equally important ways, so... Kirby's Return to Dreamland is when these final bosses really start to take a dark turn. This final act is a pretty lengthy one. After Magolor, the dude you've been helping this entire game, backstabs Team Kirby, he takes on his ultimate form with the power of the Master Crown, and sets out to conquer the universe. You ain't beating Kirby that easily though. He hitches a ride on the back of some dragon and goes after him, prompting... more space shooter gameplay. There's a quick level of this that ends with a fight against Magolor and his ship. But after that, you're sent to a long hallway with every copy ability you could ask for to prepare you as much as possible for this last encounter. The first part of this fight is pretty typical. He's got a beam attack, some projectiles, and this arena spike. Oh, and he randomly spawns a black hole in the middle because he's so freaking mad. But right when you're about to kill him, he gives himself 5 mega hit points and sends a batch of enemies towards you that includes a super ability, so you use those and deal damage accordingly, until slashing through him one final time. This last hit feels awesome and is visually gorgeous, but they couldn't just let that be the end of it. Oh no, he morphs once again into this smiley bug-looking guy. The design isn't great, but it plays pretty good. All his new attacks feel very OP, and it caps things off with the most difficulty yet. Once again though, just condense the fucking fight. There's some great gameplay in there, but combine these into one hella refined boss and it'd be peak. Why end this phase with a grand cinematic takedown just to end the last one with a regular hit? What the hell? It's got a lot going for it, but please learn when enough is enough. This is excellent, but it's on thin ice.
Hi, I'm checking in.
Oh my gosh, I'm a huge fan.
Oh, thank you.
I love
It's on thin ice. Kirby Triple Deluxe follows in the footsteps of a lot of previous entries, but improves on things in some key ways. The climax of the story is once again pretty long. You fight Mask DDD a couple times, then Queen Sectonia, after she makes a fool of her minion, but neither of these are part of the actual last fight, which is Queen Sectonia once again for a two-phase battle. Phase 1 shrinks the battleground to a few small platforms, which makes avoiding these arena-sweeping attacks a bit more challenging, and I welcome it. But after the fact, Kirby gets a little too cocky and gets grabbed by one of the vines, and it takes an unlikely team-up of Taranza and DDD to free Kirby and set him up for the final phase as Hypernova Kirby, which is a pretty badass moment. That's the main gimmick of this game, and using it here for this final moment is exactly what we needed. Now you're sucking up these massive conglomerates of shit and dealing some major damage, which is easier than the earlier phase, but I'll be damned if it ain't more satisfying. And this final stare down between the two before Kirby lands the fatal blow is cold. That's how you end a final boss. It has plenty of impactful moments, incorporates Kirby's core gameplay in great ways, and belongs up in peak tier. Planet Robobot does a lot of what Triple Deluxe does, with a fight against a corrupted ally, this time Mecha Knight Plus, then the main villain double-crossing their pawn to reveal their true plan, this time with President Haltman completing his Star Dream machine and launching it up to space, which sets up another pretty electric moment. The real Meta Knight offers up his ship for Mecha Kirby, and it turns the Hellbird all Kirbified. It's freaking rad. But the fight that breaks out severely underdelivers. It's a space shooter that's followed up by, get this, 2 more space shooters. Yeah, it's just not the finale you'd hope to see in such an incredible 2D platformer. It ends in a decent way though. After the Hellbird gets taken down, Meta Knight releases Kirby from it to land the last few hits, and these, despite just being button mashers, are a pretty cinematic and grand way to end the fight. Everything surrounding the gameplay is right where it needs to be, but this ain't it. It tries something different and fails. Kirby Star Allies ends with a fight versus Void Termina, which features 5 phases that alternate between being more traditional Kirby battles and shooter segments. In his Angel and Demon forms, you ride the Star Allies Sparkler with all your pals and blast away at these god-sized behemoths. And for all the bad stuff I've said about this type of gameplay, I think it's handled the best here. It takes place in a 3D arena, the boss takes center stage, and it feels like a warranted hybrid to land more powerful attacks on a literal destroyer of worlds. Then the Embryo and Core forms feature classic Kirby gameplay, and the attack patterns are fairly unique. He even shapeshifts into a dark matter lookalike, which is pretty cool. The 5th and final phase is a cinematic button masher like Robobot got, which I'm fine with. It goes pretty hard and is a flashy note to go out on, bringing together all the allies to kick ass. I guess if you have to make these shooter-like segments, this is how you do it. It feels impactful and climactic, and they really went all out with the spectacle this time around. I think it's an all-time great finale for the series. So, peak. And last but not least, Kirby and the Forgotten Land goes out with another really dragged out series of fights, with Forgo DDD, Leongar, and Fecto Forgo giving you all they've got before getting to the real final boss, Fecto Elphalus. Watching your ally for the rest of the game get corrupted for the final battle is pretty dramatic, and this battle doesn't disappoint. The ultimate life form, that's not named Shadow the Hedgehog for some reason, does their worst, and after the gauntlet you had to get through prior, this doesn't feel all too bad. You can see most of these attacks coming from a mile away, and it drops mad amounts of stars when it attacks, which makes for some easy damage. As the first one of these fights in full 3D, it really takes advantage of that, and adapts the Kirby style to the dimension remarkably well. Then to end the fight, Kirby sucks his friend out of the demon, and it goes on to try to make their world crash into Planet Popstar, and the only way they can stop it in time? Hell yeah, Semi-Truck Kirby. This moment is pretty fantastic. Using mouthful mode in this way to end the game is exactly what I wanted to see, and the visuals are are absolutely on point here and set the stakes straight up to the max. And then mashing some buttons seals the deal in a hyper-stylized fatal blow. It's one of the greatest endings to any of these games, and defines peak tier. And there you have it. And if you want to watch more Kirby content, check out the video on screen, where I rank every Kirby copy ability from worthless to elite. Thanks for watching.